I'm Jean Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. Today is episode 144, and it's entitled, Can Meditation Be a Tool in the Toolbox to Fight Addiction? Now, I imagine if you're listening to a podcast called Healing Outside the Box, you already know that the answer is quite possibly yes. What surprised me when I read the research articles on this is the number of studies on this topic was seemingly endless. So I'll say what I usually say in these instances, and that is, I'm only scratching the surface here. This is a fascinating area in my opinion. And if you happen to have a futuristic kind of brain, and you're not wasting it thinking about going to Mars, you might be interested in this topic as well. So I encourage you to look into this further if you're so inclined. Just for an example, there are over 380 peer-reviewed research studies on transcendental meditation alone. I kid you not. And these studies are conducted at places like Harvard Medical School and Stanford Medical School, just to name a few. So this is no longer a crunchy granola area of study. In addition to transcendental meditation, or TM, mindfulness meditation is getting a lot of attention from the mainstream. And it was made famous in this country by a guy named Jon Kabat Zinn. I did an episode on him not that long ago, and I'll give you a link in the show notes. In so many of these studies, meditation in general has been linked to improved relaxation and other personality traits that can help prevent and even treat addiction. This is by no means meant to be an all-purpose remedy, simply one tool in a toolbox to help treat addiction. And certainly I'm not going to rattle off a list of research articles. I can certainly give you links to the ones that I thought helpful. Listing off the articles would even put me to sleep, and that takes some doing. So let's just simply ask the question, how does meditation help prevent and treat addiction? Well, the experts have a lot to say on this subject, and yes, the answers to this are somewhat subjective, despite all the research studies, and that seems obvious. But basically, meditation seems to help in a few different ways. So I'll break it down and just talk about it in general terms and spout off my opinion on the subject. I encourage you to write me if you have any insight and you'd like to give me some information that I could share. That would be great. You can reach me on my contact page on my website, which is healingoutsidethebox.com. For this episode, I'm focused on transcendental meditation, TM, and mindfulness meditation, basically because these techniques have become mainstream and are well understood and well researched. But this could apply to any type of meditation or breathing exercises or yoga, or as they say, whatever floats your boat. Now let's first talk about meditation in physical pain. I found an article from the NIH that studied the ability of TM to reduce physical pain. I'll give you a link to this article in the show notes. As I see it, this can be broken down into two separate issues. If you're, say, recovering from surgery and are already meditating twice per day for, say, 20 minutes, you may be able to get off the Percocets or Oxy sooner than if you had no relaxation technique. Now that's an educated guess on my part because of what they said in that particular study. I was a dietitian and not a psychologist, but I worked in hospital settings and in outpatient settings. And this is the type of thing I would see both in my conversation with patients and after speaking to the nurses. I once asked a patient to describe to me what it felt like to take the Percocets when they were in physical pain. This person told me that they were aware of the pain, they knew the pain was there, but they didn't mind the pain, and they didn't feel anxious about it. That brings me to the second issue regarding painkillers like Percocets that are used to treat physical pain. It lowers your anxiety or fear that the pain is going to come back. This may lead you, for maybe a couple of reasons, to want more of those opioid drugs. Studies, including the one I mentioned, have in fact shown that when two different groups of people are recovering from surgery, the people that took the Percocets for only a few days always recovered faster, but according to their own perception, not according to the doctor's physical findings. People who took Percocets sometimes took them for months and months and still described having pain from the same type of surgery. Scientists now know that there is all kinds of brain chemistry changes that are going on in the addicted mind. This is pretty scary stuff. It would be pretty near impossible to be living in this country and not be aware that opioid addiction has been becoming an epidemic for at least a decade. But here's the question: can meditation, done on a regular basis, really help this? This one study showed that meditators had a decreased distress with pain when the pain was present. And these results were recorded outside of the meditation time period, not while the person was meditating. This study found that long-term meditators showed 40 to 50% less cerebral or brain blood flow response to this pain when compared to healthy controls. Okay, so that was physical pain in meditation. Now let's talk about panic or anxiety in meditation. I'm talking about TM in this study, but I imagine it applies to other meditation as well. TM appears to reduce both anxiety and panic attacks. Now, I'm going to quote Elizabeth Vargas here because A, she's a famous person and I'm not. B, she has used TM to successfully battle her own addiction to alcohol. And C, professional journalists just, well, have a way of putting things. Here's a quote from Vargas. People with anxiety tend to be hyper-reactive. We are like jackrabbits, off and running to the races, reacting to some event or another, even while the event is still happening. Vargas tells us that TM has helped her develop what she calls her reflective pause. Quote, transcendental meditation helps you slow down. If you can slow down long enough to think clearly, you can start to not only manage that panic, but understand that what you're so terrified of isn't really all that terrifying. Close quote. That last quote was from her talk at the National Summit for Recovery, Meditation, and the Brain. Here's another quote from that talk. You're learning to not attach completely to whatever the fear is, and then to let that go. Set that aside a bit. Meditating has taught me to sit with my thoughts, my feelings, and just observe them. You cannot turn your brain off or stop your thoughts, but you can try while meditating to not become too invested in them. She was talking specifically about how meditation has helped her panic and anxiety, and trying to recover from alcohol addiction, I imagine, had given her plenty of both. Number 3, meditation helps us to improve our self-awareness. Whether the specific addiction is to alcohol, drugs, food, sex, shopping, gambling, or smoking, your mind is often focused on how to get your substance of choice, how to take steps to acquire it, and how you feel while you're using it. And then there is the sensitive issue of getting your hands on money for that next dose of whatever it is. Very little time and energy are spent noticing the present moment, except maybe to try and change your experience, even if that experience is to make your high a higher high. With all that going on, the present moment becomes a bit like a constant agitated state. Now, Jon Kabat Zinn, the guy that brought us mindfulness meditation, would say this. First of all, I should quote how he defines mindfulness. He defines mindfulness as the non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. It follows that it could be an effective tool in addiction treatment because it helps our scattered mind focus on our breathing, focus on our mantra, focus on a beautiful sunset, etc. And now there are lots of clinical studies that have found this to be the case. Self-judgment and feeling like you may be inadequate will worsen the cycle of addiction. If meditation helps you to be non-judgmental and more aware of your surroundings, it would only make sense that this could be a tool in the toolbox. If you're more self-aware and accept the present moment, you become more able to empower yourself to make needed changes. It sort of stands to reason that you need to feel more confident that you can make these positive changes in order to remain clean and sober. So meditation may help you accept those uncomfortable feelings that can get you over the hump to modify your behavior. Automatic pilot is a good thing if you're flying a jet, but not so much a good thing if you're learning to make lasting changes for the better. Another way to put it is that meditation teaches you to be a neutral observer. This is, of course, easier said than done, which is why it helps to consciously learn this behavior. But hopefully, if you choose a neutral rather than an judgmental response to your thoughts and feelings, it can help increase your self-compassion. Now, I'm no expert in the psychology field, but in my opinion, we beat ourselves up altogether too much, and self-criticism and negativity don't help if you're trying to heal from an addiction. So instead of getting angry at ourselves for being so angry at ourselves, hopefully with meditation, we can just notice those feelings and consciously think about what may have triggered them. Now, if you want to look further into this for yourself, there are many experts in the field to help you. You can look these people up online, and I'll leave you some links in the show notes as well. I mentioned Jon Kabat Zinn and mindfulness meditation. There's also transcendental meditation, and they have their own website, tm.org. If you're looking to find information on how transcendental meditation can help kids and young people struggling with addiction, I recommend the David Lynch Foundation website. The podcast that I like to listen to on meditation is 10% Happier with Dan Harris. Again, a journalist is not necessarily an expert in the psychology field, but they know how to interview people who are. He has interviewed all of these people, and they talk about some really fascinating stuff. You can find his podcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, etc. The bottom line is that meditation of any kind can help relax the mind and ease our pain, both physical and psychological. Once again, a tool in the toolbox. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.